Good evening, everyone, and another exciting edition of Pardon Our Picks, where perfection is a work in progress. My name is Sam, and of course, alongside me, as always, is my esteemed colleague Tarik. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How about you, Sam?
Doing pretty good. We're halfway through the season, and I couldn't be more excited to see what the second half of the season has for us. Frankly, since my team's been pretty terrible.
Yeah, mine has too, and they made a huge comeback on Sunday, so I can't complain this week.
Absolutely, they did. It was exciting. Mind you, this broadcast is brought to you by morningwoodcrafter.com, inspired by design, crafted by hand. All right, so half the season's over for all of these teams, even with the COVID issues. Who do you think is on track for playoffs? Who's your
Uh,
team right now?
I don't know that my team is ready for playoffs, but let's see. So pretty much all the leads are who I think are going to go. I don't think there's too many upsets. I think that we might be able to make a 500. If we can go 8-8, I'll be happy. But with the other, Kansas City's clearly going to get the AFC West. I actually see the Raiders getting the second seed, and probably one of the wild. Or how many wild cards do we get this year?
It's 3 wild cards this year.
So is it 2? So it's top 2, and then 3 wild cards. Okay. This year's going to mess me up. I'm sure someone's going to correct me on who gets what and how many. So yeah, that's how I see that with the AFC West. With the rest of the AFC, we go with, all right, this division. All right, you and I aren't big Ravens fans. We root for the home team. Ravens Steelers are probably going to get the top 2 spots. They're going to Browns maybe. But I mean, you got so many teams that are like, I think, right on that line with the Browns and the Bills and stuff like that. So you got a lot of teams that are coming up.
NFC, yeah.
And that's just the AFC. That's not even going to the NFC.
NFC wise, you got your top tier teams, and then you got those teams that are nipping at their heels. Surprisingly, Chicago. I didn't see that coming.
No.
I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. You got, the Seattle Seahawks. Their defense has been proven mortal. Green Bay's lost to teams that they probably shouldn't have. I mean, it's kind of a toss-up who gets that top seed. We just know one thing: it isn't coming out of the NFC East.
At this point, they should probably just go, no one from the NFC makes it. Like, usually it's the top out of each conference. They should just go, you know what, guys? Better luck next year. I root for your Cowboys. My dad's a Cowboys fan. When Baltimore didn't have a team growing up, that's the team we watched. Yeah. So I watched. They're probably my top NFC team. So I've watched the Cowboys. I always have a soft spot for them because my dad's a huge fan and you are. So it's just like, I can't do it anymore. Like, and I mean, even me as a Broncos fan, I'm just like, and I mean, and you can make all the excuses that you want. At least for my team, like, oh well, like Von Miller's out and this person's hurt and this person's sick, and I mean, now we had like 3 cases and now Elway and I think the GM have COVID and stuff like that. So it's just going through. And then you have teams like San Francisco who started out so well and they had so much promise. And then everyone keeps getting hurt. And a quarterback got me -1 points in fantasy last week.
He is out for the season, I think.
So, it's I'd say it's anybody's game because we don't know, especially with COVID and everyone seems a little bit more injury prone because I think everyone's being a little too extra careful on the field with certain things. And then you got other people playing a little bit more rough. Like there's a couple hits from that Steelers-Ravens game that I'm just like, that was probably unnecessary.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I 100% agree. It's just been a crazy year. I mean, you got some of the teams at the top that you were expecting there, but some of those other teams, people just they came out of nowhere, and some other teams dropped off because of injuries and COVID and whatnot. It's been a crazy year. And you know
Mm-hmm.
what else is crazy about this year? After last week, Tarik is now in the lead. 9-5 record last week against my 7-7. He is now beating me by one game in the overall standings.
Fantastic.
That's right. Ooh.
All right. It probably won't last, but I got there. It took half the season, but I got there.
That's okay. It's a game of two halves, as the Ravens know, and we're going to move on to Tarik's game of the week.
Okay, so again, as I like to say and specify every time we make one of these videos, I try to go beyond what the NFL has pointed out. However, a lot of the matchups this week are very lopsided. And so I went with two teams that I think are doing well. My pick is the Sunday night game, Tampa Bay, at Tampa Bay with New Orleans. So New Orleans at Tampa Bay. I think it's Drew Brees usually doing really well, putting up a good year this year. The Bucks, Tom Brady's proven he's mortal. He's not quite as the GOAT as everyone saw he English. I know words. He's not quite as up there as untouchable as we saw him in New England. But
He's no longer the elite.
yeah, but
Absolutely.
he's still bringing up this team, and I think he's getting a little bit more respect now than he did all the years, even though he's got enough rings to fill a hand. Um, I think I give him a little bit more respect now than I did before, because my big argument as a huge Peyton Manning fan in both the Colts and the Broncos, Peyton Manning brought those teams up. The only reason the Colts made it to the two Super Bowls and the many, many years of playoffs and everything was because of him. Because we saw as soon as he got hurt, that team went last place with the Colts. So we didn't know exactly how Tom Brady was, because the one year he went out, they made the playoffs. So
No,
they didn't make it. Oh,
they were that close, though.
yeah, they still had a winning record.
Yes.
Um, um, but so regardless, going back to the game, New Orleans Saints at Tampa Bay. I think it's going to be good. It's going to be a clash of the Titans here. But I think New Orleans, I think, is just a little bit more, even though the winning record goes to Tampa Bay. I think Drew Brees and the Saints are going to be able to pull it out.
This one is for first place in the division right now. You got New Orleans with Drew Brees. They won in overtime against the Chicago Bears. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers looked just mortal against the New York Giants last week. But then again, sometimes is that a fluke on behalf of the Giants? On behalf of Tampa Bay? Is that what they actually are? Who knows? I've got New Orleans in this one because I think Tampa Bay won the first meeting in week one, and I think that they go in there and they rectify their previous loss against Tampa Bay. All right, let's move on to our Thursday night game, the Green Bay Packers against the San Francisco 49ers.
Yep. So this should be another. If you're talking to me 2 weeks ago, I would have said this would have been a really good game. San Francisco has not held up without Jay Garoppolo. Is that how we say it?
Jimmy Garoppolo.
All right. So they're just not as good without him, and with a lot of pieces hurt. I'm gonna go with Green Bay on this.
Yeah, Green Bay. I mean, they lost last week to Minnesota. This is kind of a bounce back for them. San Francisco's defense still pretty good, but their offense is running through a backup quarterback, third string running back. I mean, they're hurt. Green Bay in this one,
Yeah.
probably big. All right, let's move on to the local matchup. The Baltimore Ravens going into Indianapolis.
Yep, we got a tied record here. Um, this is usually it's usually bitter when it's played here, just because most people in Baltimore that are older than us get really upset about this. Um, but surprisingly, the Colts are doing well with Rivers, better than we all thought he was going to do, because he's a different style quarterback than what they're used to, than what Manning and Luck were. But I mean, the record that's a better record than they've had since Luck left. Um, at this point, so. But Baltimore coming off of, I still think they're one of the best teams in the league, but they're coming off a bitter loss against Pittsburgh that I think a couple of calls, had they been a little different, might have ended the game differently. I don't necessarily. Ravens were outplayed a little bit, but the game was very close, as we know. It came down to that wire. I think Baltimore's got something to prove. They're gonna come back and they're gonna win this.
Baltimore off that heartbreaking loss last week. Indianapolis off the bye. They've had time to prepare for Lamar Jackson. It looks like the defense of Indianapolis has been pretty good. I think that they knew the rest because they started looking tired, little more vulnerable the past couple of weeks that they were active. Baltimore, you're right. A couple of different calls on the offense. If they would have taken their foot off the gas, maybe that's a different game at the end of the day. But I do have Baltimore riding the ship here because I think that their offense will overcome the Indianapolis defense, and the Indianapolis offense it's just not inspiring to me. So
No.
All right, let's move on to the Denver Broncos and their surprise victory last week, going up against the 2-6 Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, so I think Denver's starting to get pieces into place. They got that double running back situation with Lindsey and Gordon. Locke is starting to prove his worth and get the experience. He needs, as we just said with Baltimore, he needs to let off the gas a little bit. He tried to shove a bit too much and try to bullet some passes in there that should have been lofted or a nice little hand down. He's trying to rocket them in there a bit too much. Atlanta has just not looked good. I'm not impressed with Atlanta at all. But so I think with the rise in Denver, they're finally starting to get their step. I think Denver's going to come into town and win this.
Denver off that pretty good win last week. The Atlanta Falcons also have a pretty good win. I think since they fired their coach, they've actually looked like a much better team. They're throwing the ball around to all their big receivers. They're starting to get healthy. So is Denver. Denver with Drew Lock looked pretty good towards the end of that game. I mean, they came back, they won. It was almost inspired me to pick them, but I got Atlanta in this one. I got Atlanta in this one simply because I think the Atlanta offense they're starting to hit their stride. And their defense, this actually might be a high-scoring game. I just don't know that Denver can keep up with the high scoring. So I got Atlanta in this one in a shootout.
Okay.
Let's move on to two teams that generally don't go into shootouts. The Seattle Seahawks going up against the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, so I picked probably against the grain on this one. As we talked about in previous videos, Buffalo's my sleeper team. I think they're gonna, like, Seattle's one of the better teams, but look at those records. They're the same amount of wins, and I think just Seattle hasn't had their bye week yet.
No, Seattle has. It's Buffalo, hasn't it?
Oh, Buffalo has it. Okay, sorry. So, but So looking at this, it's in Buffalo, in their hometown. You're coming east is always harder, getting that jet lag and stuff like that in, getting used to the time zone difference, which sometimes can play a factor. Um, but I'm going to go with Buffalo in this.
Seattle in the past has had a hard time coming to the East Coast, playing in the Eastern time zone. It definitely is a factor for those West Coast teams. Buffalo has looked like a team in recent weeks that has struggled to win games, but they've won them. They've won the close games. They've had to come back against some teams. They had to have a last-minute fumble last week from Cam Newton, a 2-5 Patriots team, in order to win that one. I think that their luck runs out this week, simply because the ball can't always bounce your way, and it seems to have been bouncing Buffalo's way just enough for them to win. And Seattle is one of those teams that won't give you that opportunity. So I got Seattle in a close game, low-scoring game in Buffalo. All right, let's move on to the surprising 5-3 Chicago Bears going up against the 5-2 Tennessee Titans, who lost last week to the Bengals.
Yeah, so I think Tennessee's a little butthurt about this. I think they're going to come back with a vengeance. Chicago, they remind me of the Bears when I was growing up, just very defensive. So it's kind of like offense versus defense. Like, okay, what's gonna break first? And I tend to usually lean towards offense and defense. It's just the way my brain works. So I'm going to go with Tennessee.
Tennessee, like I said, with that close loss to Cincinnati last week, the 5-3 Bears in that overtime loss to New Orleans last week. New Orleans they were kind of flat. Chicago did pretty good last week with all things considered. But Tennessee, I think they lost 2 weeks in a row. They lost to Pittsburgh, then they lost to the Bengals, and I think this week they're pissed. Their running game is going to get dominant this week. They're going to run all over the Bears defense, which is pretty good, but I think that they're going to do it. I got Tennessee in this game, and I think that they're going to start thinking about going back to Mitch Trubisky in Chicago.
Okay.
So now on to a surprising game. We have the 4-3 Miami Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa, however you pronounce his name, going up against the 5-2 Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, looking at this, it's hard to tell. It's Dolphins got a winning record, not usually something we hear about. Arizona doing a little better than they were at the beginning of the season. I'm going to go with Arizona. It's hard for me to pick Miami on a lot of things. They're still trying to rebuild with leftover pieces from New England. So I'm going to go with Arizona.
Miami, with the victory last week against a hurt San Francisco team, they looked pretty good on defense. That's where they got most of the points on the defensive side, if I'm not mistaken. At least they got some of them.
Yeah.
But they looked dominant on the defensive side because of who they were playing against. Arizona coming off that victory against Seattle. Big victory for them. Is this going to be a letdown game for them? I don't think so. Arizona at home is going to keep that momentum going and keep pace with the Seattle Seahawks. All right, let's move on to our quick hitters, where we're just going to run through these real quick. We got the 7-0 Squealers against the 2-6 Cowgirls.
Yeah, so as I said, Cowgirls, sorry, in my head. I just can't pick them against the last undefeated team. I'm going with Steelers.
I'm going Steelers too. Cowboys third-string quarterback, no offensive line. Recipe for Steelers to win. Mm-hmm. The Carolina Panthers going up against the Kansas City Chiefs off a bye week.
Yeah, so again, can't really go against one of the better top teams in the NFL right now. So Kansas City.
Kansas City's not actually coming off a bye week. Excuse me, I didn't mean that. But I got Kansas City anyway because they're the better team. The Detroit Lions, without Matthew Stafford, mind you, he just got put onto the COVID list, going up against the 2-5 Vikings who won last week against Green Bay.
Yeah, so I'm going with Minnesota on this. But neither one of these teams are looking real good without Matthew Stafford. Minnesota, both with losing records. Just going with Minnesota.
Any Detroit team that doesn't have Matthew Stafford at quarterback is a losing team. I got Minnesota. The other two teams from the NFC East, the 1-7 New York Giants, showing some signs of life against the 2-5 Washington team.
Yeah, I'm going with the Giants on this one. Yeah.
It's not as crazy a pick as you think. I'm picking the Giants too, simply because they're showing life, and the Redskins aren't. Yes. All right, let's go to a pair of 1-6 teams in the AFC South. Houston at Jacksonville.
Yeah, I'm going with Houston. Yeah.
All right. Jacksonville, they are trying out some different quarterbacks to replace Gardner because Gardner's not pulling his weight. Got Houston in this one because none of those quarterbacks are going to be able to beat them. The Las Vegas Raiders going up against the LA Chargers.
Yep, so this is two former California teams. Sorry, just trying to grab my list here. I'm wasting time. There we go. I'm going with Vegas.
The Chargers with a last-second loss last week. The Raiders with a pretty convincing win in the past couple of weeks. I believe it was last week. I'm not 100% sure on that. But you know what? I got the Chargers anyway. I think Herbert gets another win this week. And finally to our Monday night game where the AFC East, doesn't matter which East it is, you got terrible teams in them. The 2-5 New England Patriots going up against the New York Jets.
Yeah, I just can't pick the Jets for anything. I think they're going to go 0-16. So I'm going with New England.
I could pick the Jets to do something. Let's lose this week. I got New England. All right, that's it for our picks this week, folks. If you got a question or want to pick a guest, let's go ahead and put it in the comments.
Yeah, make sure you like the video. Let us know you watched it. Subscribe, hit that bell so you know when we're putting up videos.
Absolutely, and we love having you guys. And for Pardon Our Picks, I'm Sam.
I'm Tarik.
And you have a great football week.
Bye, guys.